I wasn't even 2 years old when my father was arrested and accused as an enemy of the people. My elder brother was arrested not long before him. My mother and father were repressed. This date is very personal for thousands of families in Kazakhstan. They couldn't tell the stories of the horrific event without shuddering. False accusations, illegal arrests, shootings, famine, and millions of deaths. The victims are remembered on May 31st every year on the Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Political Repression. The date was included in the national calendar since 1997.
Я пришла в музей, Долинский музей памяти жертв политических.
Every year on May 31st, I visit the Dolinka Museum of Victims of Political Repression. Dolinka was the center of Karlag, and there were camps everywhere in this area.
Центр Карлага. Тут повсюду были лагеря.
Each step that Mariya Ermachenkova makes is difficult for her, but she must go to the museum. There were too many memories there with terrible story behind the presentable exterior facade. Once upon a time, the Karlag administration was located here. More than 1 million people went through the horrors of arrest, torture, and exhausting labor at the camp. Among the victims were her parents. Their personal files are kept in museum archives.
Это личное дело моих родителей.
This is my parents' personal file. Here they are. This is my father and mother. This is father. There's no picture of my brother, but he was there too. My father was arrested either in early spring or in April 1949. I'm not exactly sure, but I know that it was in spring. 2 months later, my mother was arrested. After that, I stayed with my brother. I was 2 and my brother was 10. We were left abandoned.
Весной, в начале весны, то ли в апреле, то ли, не знаю, где-то, ну, знаю, что весной. А потом, месяца через 2, арестовали маму. И все, и мы остались с братом. Мне было 2 года, а брату было 10. И все, мы остались брошены.
Mariya and her brother were taken care of by their grandparents immediately after their parents' arrest. 2 years later, her grandfather was taken away by a black Soviet prison van, followed by her grandmother. She wasn't allowed to take her grandchildren with her. At that time, Mariya and her brother didn't know why their father had been convicted. They learned about it much later. Their parents were arrested due to their uncle's denunciation of their family. He made a report that Mariya's father was involved in counter-revolutionary activities. In those years, a person could be charged under Article 58 based on the allegation.
Папа у меня работал в Сельмаге продавцом. Вот. Ну и, естественно, эти вот ночью приходили, эти банды.
My father worked as a salesman in a village store. Gangs would come at night asking him for food, cigarettes, vodka, basically anything including bread. That's why he was accused. Because he communicated with the gangs and he gave them food. I've asked my father, why did he give them food and other things? And he said that if he didn't, we wouldn't be sitting here talking and we would have been dead. Those who refuse to help the gangs are immediately shot on the spot without trial or investigation. That's how my family ended up in the concentration camp.
Они к нему приходили, что он им давал вот продукты. Я говорила папе, говорю, пап, а почему можно было им не давать? Он говорит, а если бы я бы им не давал, мы бы, говорит, сейчас тут не сидели бы и не разговаривали бы. Нас бы, говорит, уже давно не было. Тем, кто оказывал сопротивление, без суда и следствия сразу расстреливали на месте.
Mariya's father was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Her mother was also imprisoned for the same amount of year. Her uncle, whose accusations had broken up the family, moved into their house. There are many similar stories, broken destinies, scattered families, all because of the consequences of the authoritarian policy. It's no accident that a ruined shuddering was placed during the exposition of the museum that is located in the building of the former Karlag administration. The shuddering is the canopy of the yurt. It symbolizes prosperity and family well-being among the Kazakhs. But as you can see, this shuddering is broken. Its split shows the pressure of living under the totalitarian regime system and reflects the tragedy of the entire nation. Ivan Kondrashov is a researcher at the museum. A historian by profession, he has studied many archival documents. He joined the museum immediately after his university graduation and took part in the creation of the exhibition, together with artists and restorers. He is a replica of the observation tower. Part of it covers the portrait of Stalin. Visitors will often feel like they're being watched as they approach the tower, regardless of which side they come from. Those who visit the museum for the first time will feel like they're in the repression era. One can see Kazakhstan's map a little further from the tower. The dark spot on the map marks the area of the Karlag, one of the largest labor camps during the USSR. Its area is as big as the concentration camp in France. It feels as if we're being sent to the camp when we walk along the corridor of the museum. Under each of the original lanterns that light up the perimeter of the different Karlag camp departments, you'll be able to see copies of pages from the personal files of the Karlag prisoners. These cases only apply to those who served their sentences under the infamous Article 58, which deemed them as enemies of the people. Approved in 1926, the article was introduced for people who were accused of counter-revolution, anti-Sovietism, spies, and many more. In the late 1930s, prominent politicians were usually accused as being national fascists and spies. Turar Riskulov, who were against the genocide of Kazakhs, was shot in 1938. A year earlier, Nikmet Nurmakov was sentenced to death because of his fight for the status of the Kazakh language. Many others were also falsely accused and murdered, such as Alikhan Bokeikhanov, who dreamt of granting autonomy to the Kazakh people, and Sultanbek Kozhanov, who paid for the name of the new capital. In Kizil Orda, authorities tried to put an end to the spirit of nationalism among the people.
Менің әкем де, ағам да 1937 жылы халық жауы деген атпенен репрессияға ұшырап қамалған екен. 1937 жылдың сентябрь айы.
I wasn't even 2 years old when my father was arrested and accused of being an enemy of the people. Not long before that, my elder brother was arrested. Zhanaydar Sadvakasov worked in a high government position. He was the first Attorney General of the Republic and the first Secretary of the Almaty Regional Party Committee. He was detained at work, and later, our father was arrested as well. We learned later on that they were brought to Dolinka and were shot after interrogations.
Сондай ең ақырғысы сол Алматының Авкомы менен Алматы қалалық партия комитетінің бірінші хатшысы болып еңбек еткен екен. Сол ұсталатында сол жұмыстан ұстаған екен.
In the 1920s, Kurman Sadvakasov's brother, Zhanaydar, created a central commission for the translation of court proceedings into Kazakh language, and he was the first chairman of the commission. He advocated the creation of Kazakh schools and theaters and dreamt of increasing the number of publications in his native language. In 1937, Zhanaydar was accused of leading a nationalist group.
Оларды енді халық кейінгі халықтан қалған, олардың көзін көрген адамдардан сұраған уақытта олардың ешқандай халыққа жаулығы болған жоқ. Халыққа қамқорлық болды қайта. Халықты
Those who were close to my father and brother said that they had never been enemies, but rather they were being slandered. They've always helped people and they wanted our society to be educated. They also wanted the Kazakh language to become the state language. Based on the materials of the criminal case, Zhanaydar was accused of being a spy for Japan, while my father was accused of stealing 100 sheep. We learned all this much later.
Деген жала жауып, сонымен отырғызған ғой енді. Ал әкемді, ауылда отырған әкемді, қоғамның малынан 100 бас қойды алып сойып жеп қойыпсың деп, онда жаңағы халық жаусын деп. Бірақ енді атып тастапты осы Долинка келіп.
Politicians and lawyers, doctors and teachers, everyone who had different ideas from the state was executed. Those who didn't want to adhere to the new ideological rules were sent to concentration camps that were built throughout the USSR countries. Karlag is one of the biggest camps. In the 1930s, NKVD officers forcibly evicted an entire local population from a vast territory, taking away their livestock. For the Kazakhs, this meant starvation. Several camps were built in Kazakhstan. The labor prisoners are used to work in heavy industry sector. In those years, the development of the central part of the republic was just beginning. Thousands of prisoners from all over Soviet Union were sent to Karlag. They had to build railways and barracks and mine ore, all by hand. Many people died of hunger and cold. The results of the exhausting labor works are collected in one of the halls of the Dolinka Museum.
Здесь мы как раз вашему вниманию показываем моменты, которые отражают именно развитие хозяйственной деятельности.
Here are some moments that reflect the economic activities in Karlag. Large areas of land were allocated for crop industry development in the camp. On these lands, prisoners mowed and planted huge gardens, plantations, and orchards. Water is needed for the harvest, so a unique irrigation system was built in Karlag, including the small aqueducts for water supply. Researchers were often made to grow new crops and create varieties of plant seeds. The acclimatization system was also created because, as you know, central Kazakhstan has sharp continental climate. Due to the system, the crops grew healthily. Even crops grown in the south were planted here. It's here in Dolinka, in the present-day Samarka village, where melons, long southern melons, grew, as well as watermelons, grapes, and other fruits and vegetables. Behind the barbed wires, there were real luminaries of science, breeders, agronomists, and academics. One of them, Igor Fortunatov, came out with a plan to protect the camp's huge plantation from soil erosion. Vasily Pustovoit managed to create over 40 new varieties of sunflower while in captivity. Scientists in the camps worked hard, and the results were astonishing. Svetlana Khomich, one of the previous village residents, recalls that the achievements of the camp's collective farms were often exhibited at the exhibitions of achievements of national economy event. But the crops were first looked after by the prisoners at Dolinka.
Эта выставка наша, вот именно долинская, проходила всегда именно вот возле этого здания.
The exhibition belongs to the people of Dolinskaya, as what happened previously was just near this building. It's shown here, indoors and outdoors, of the wheat varieties. Agriculture, farming, and animal husbandry were very advanced here. We could see the best, the largest animals in terms of weight at the exhibition. I remember a bull named Harold. It was ranked third in the world by weight. There was another cow, Moroshka. It produced a lot of milk. I don't really remember about it. The building is very unique and very beautiful in those days. People used to gather in the square. Children would run away from school with their bags and files just to see what was going on. Everything that happened here was sent to Moscow during the exhibition of achievements of national economy.
Вот и тут вот на этой площади собирались массы людей. Мы, дети, бежали со школы с сумками, с портфелями, не ходили домой, только бы вот увидеть все то, что видели мы, а потом это все, конечно же, переправлялось в Москву на ВДНХ.
There's a vacant lot a few meters away from the building. A cultural center was once built there by the hands of the prisoners. Today, nothing remains of the center, but some of the foundation bricks are still standing. Some people are living there. Karlag played an important role in Svetlana Khomich's life. She devoted her whole life to children, following the footsteps of her first teacher, Lydia Zakharchenko, who came to Karlag from Vladivostok. Lydia was sentenced to 5 years in prison as a family member of the nation's enemies. But at that time, her students didn't know about her fate. In the 1940s, a mechanical repair plant was opened to replace old workshops. Ivan had previously provided the camp with spare parts and agricultural machinery equipment, but at the beginning of the war, the manufacturing sector was reoriented. 850 prisoners mastered the production of mines with manufacturing units of up to 40,000 from the assembly line every month. The prisoners also built quarries and factories, electrical power plants and coal mines, as well as production design bureau. Meanwhile, geophysicists and aircraft designers developed theories that led to the creation of a turbojet engine. The names were later associated with the development of domestic aviation, but in those years, they were the enemies of the people.
Статья 58, репрессива.
Based on Article 58, the enemies of the people were repressed, or they were denounced and became victims of perjury. It was enough to simply denounce a neighbor. There was no need for trial. There were mass repressions, and if you look at history in the 1937-1938, during the Great Terror period, quotas for repression were approved under the order of the People's Commissar of the Soviet Union, Nikolai Yezhov. A letter was sent to every region regarding the law, and there were two categories of the quotas. The first category was clear. It stated the number of people needed to be sentenced to capital punishment or execution. The second category indicated the number of people that were needed to be confined in camps. In a way, they were planning to destroy their own people.
Это были планы на уничтожение буквально своего же народа.
The museum staff shows the condition of the prison cells with low ceilings, complete darkness, and dampness. Prisoners often became sick and died, but there's no exact death toll. Historians believe that the number goes up to tens of thousands of people. The installation camera in the female cell shows exactly the conditions of the women in the camps. The footage gave us an idea of what were the conditions like during that time. Sometimes the cells were cold, sometimes stuffy, sometimes very damp. It depends on the season. Across the wall is the interrogation room, and a little further on is the men's cell. Next to it is the punishment cell in prisons. All these weren't located in the basement of NKVD's main department. The basement housed archives and warehouses. The museum managed to recreate a realistic atmosphere of the camp. Visitors are even presented with the pictures of prisoners that were sentenced to death. Behind this prison, you can see a figure of a man sentenced to capital punishment by execution. The prisoner's fate was changed by this tragedy. First, he was arrested, then interrogated by investigators, humiliated, and put in a cold cell and tortured. The prisoner went through all the horrible experiences, but still the NKVD authorities sentenced him to the highest penalty, which is execution. As you can see, this figure is represented in a clean white shirt because white is a symbol of purity. According to the concept of the museum, artists, designers, and museum employees, the white shirt on this person shows that his soul was pure. His thoughts and actions were pure. It shows that he was innocent. Unfortunately, people like him were killed and shot, and the clothes that they were wearing are completely naked. The museum's exhibition attracts many tourists worldwide. Among the visitors are the relatives of former prisoners of Karlag. But there were fewer guests last year because of the quarantine restrictions due to coronavirus. Most of the visitors are students.
Если честно, немного страшно, потому что,
To be honest, it's a little scary. It's just shocking to see how we live now and how people used to live. There was a torture chamber in the basement where the prisoners were tortured. It's really scary. There were punishment cells too, where people were lowered into a small pit and water was poured on them. They had to sit there in the cold during winter. It's very horrible.
Больше всего завораживает комнаты, в которых
The cells where the prisoners used to live in were truly astonishing. There's no bed. Everyone had to sleep on rags and straws. It looks very creepy. They received cruel treatment and children were treated ruthlessly. Some of them were taken away from their mothers. It's very horrible.
Безжалостное отношение к детям, когда детей забирали у мам. Это жутко.
But that's not the worst part. Mariya Ermachenkova says that even after her parents' release, they were very afraid of ending up behind bars again.
Я не помню, я что-то сказала. А мне мама потом так отругала. Что же я сказала?
I said something, but I don't remember what it was. My mother scolded me for saying it. What did I say? Oh yes, red. I said my mother doesn't like the color red. She asked me if I wanted her to be taken back to the camp. I told her I didn't mean anything bad when I said the color red. She said to me, "Do you know the color of the flag? It's red." So then I couldn't say anything else.
А ты знаешь, что цвет флага, говорит, красный? Вот. Ничего нельзя было говорить.
Сол 48 жыл сол мектепке келіп, бірінші 5-ші класстың партасына отырған уақытта сол алғашқыда сол менің қасыма
I remember when I was in 5th grade at school, a girl sat next to me in class, but after lunch break she moved to another place because she didn't want to sit next to the son of the enemy of the people. Can you imagine how the policy affected people? It even affected children. We were shunned. Anyone who tried to communicate with us were threatened to be implicated under the article. We were able to raise our heads only after our loved ones were rehabilitated.
Сол 57 жылы кесім жасау Хрущевтің қаулысы шықты. Сол қаулы шыққаннан кейін барып кішкене былай басымызды көтердік.
Rehabilitated followed by restored in the rights and then returned to the good name, but not all cases have been declassified. The latest data shows that the fate of thousands of Kazakhstanis is shrouded in the secrets of history. Scientists are trying to gain access to classified materials. A special commission was created on behalf of the president in order to provide rehabilitation for all victims of the regime.